Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today I am so excited to be here and to be talking Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's one of my all-time favorite shows. I've seen every episode a million times, but bear with me. The reason I'm talking about this one, I'm talking about season 4, episode 7, Who Pooped the Bed? Yes, that's the title of the episode. But I'm talking about it because Dee decides she's going to have a Sex in the City night, and they actually reference back to Sex in the City quite a bit. So I thought, you know what? We're on such a roll within Just Like That, we might as well talk about this episode too. Now, before I go too far into this, I have to let you know I have new merch out. I'm so excited about it. I'm going to put a link in the comments, a link in the description rather, and please find it and click it and check it out because, you know, I love to say this is a load of pants, so I made shirts and bags and things that say this is a load of pants, and they turned out so cute and I'm so happy with it. It's got this cute little graphic of pants and this is a load of, so enjoy. You guys, this episode, I laughed so hard rewatching this. This has to be one of my top 5 favorite episodes. I have seen this one so many times, but I still took notes and laughed my ass off the entire way through. I'm going to go ahead and assume you're familiar with Always Sunny, so I'm not going to be explaining who is who because you probably already know. You've heard of it. You've seen it. You love it like I do. Whatever. You've had some sort of passing dealing with Always Sunny. So we'll go through the episode, though. We're going to laugh. I wrote down some of my favorite lines because there are a ton, but we are going to talk about the Sex and the City references. I never thought I'd have to give this warning, but I do want to warn you, this episode has to do very much with who pooped the bed. So it has to do with poop. So if you're not into that kind of humor, you might want to click off. If you are, let's make some jokes. So right off the bat, Dee is suggesting a new martini bar that opened downtown. Of course, everybody has to shit on her ideas because that's what they do. Dennis is like, oh God, she just watched that Sex in the City movie. And Max says, when will that show die? Which is so funny and so ironic. Dennis says, no one wants to play Sex in the City with you. Just then, Frank and Charlie burst in. They're arguing. Charlie says, I did not poop the bed. And we find out that there was a piece of poop that this is the second time. So basically, one piece of poop came out. They just decided to throw it out. They weren't going to worry about it. But then a second day in a row, somebody pooped the bed. So this time, Charlie hung on to it in a Tupperware container. I know, it's disgusting, but stick with me because there's lots of Sex and the City stuff. Mac and Dennis say they're going to clear their schedules and they're going to figure out the mystery of the poop. So Dee is pissed because they won't be going to this new martini bar with her. Okay, so the other thing that relates back to, and just like is the waitress has a severe drinking problem. We've learned this throughout the show. She references back to it. And while I'm never laughing at that, I'm laughing at the show's take on that. So she's walking down the road. Dee jumps out from behind a car and says, hey, girlfriend. Well, of course, we know they hate each other. She scares the piss out of the waitress. The waitress says, stop calling me girlfriend. So Dee's like, we're pulling together a girls' night out. And waitress says, why would I ever go out with you? I hate you. Dee says, don't you remember how Samantha and Carrie? And then she says, you know, I can't say the word here, guys, because it's a horrible word. It's a play on, I'll say it nicer. She said the lesbian redhead, and how they did fun stuff. Again, referring back to Sex and the City. So basically, Charlie has a stalker notebook because he's always been obsessed with the waitress, and it has all of her locations she's going to be. So Dee was able to check that, find out she was free that evening, and says, if you'll come out with me tonight, I'll give you the notebook. So the waitress agrees. Meanwhile, the guys find a scientist at a lab. They refer to it. It sounds like it's at a college somewhere. And they say, we want you to examine our poopy. We just want to know where it came from. It's the only way for us to get to the bottom of this. So he's like, what, you want me to examine a plastic container of feces? And they're like, yeah. He says, get out of my lab. And I love it. I believe it was Dennis says, you just missed out on extraordinary adventures. So they call him not nice word, and then they leave. Meanwhile, this guy pulls him aside and says, hey, you got a turd? I'll take a look at it. And he starts examining it and saying things like, whoever it is seems to be eating a lot of newspaper. And they say, well, that could have been either of us. It appears to be piece of a credit card. And they say, well, inconclusive. Everybody's freaking out, like, how are you guys eating this stuff? He says, there appears to be a great deal of blood in here, so you need to go to the doctor, inconclusive, and wolf hair, inconclusive. You guys, I was dying during the scene. I could not take my notes. I was laughing so hard, I forgot about the wolf hair thing. So when they decide it's all inconclusive, Max says, why don't you just run the DNA test? And the guy says, oh no, I'm just an econ major. I just wanted to look at some poop. Charlie says, dude, you've wasted our time and ruined our turd. Again, the writing on this is so much better than in Just Like That. So then we go to Artemis, Dee, and the waitress. And you guys, if you're watching this, by the way, it's on Hulu. You need to watch Artemis dancing because I could not stop laughing. I kept rewinding it and watching it. It's so funny. So they're at this club called Blue Martini. And Dee says she's the sassy one who plays by her own rules, talking about Artemis. Okay. Artemis then yells, you guys, I can't get through this. Artemis yells out, I'm going to take off my bra and blast my... I'm going to take off my bra and blast my nips. Oh my God. So Dee says, let's talk. Let's have fun. Let's bring the guys to us. And she starts trying to make conversation and says, hey, Artemis, where'd you get that top? Like they would on Sex and the City. And Artemis says, it's Burlington Coat Factory. It's a regular. So Dee then tries to order 3 Cosmos. The waitress stops her and says that she'd like a glass of water. And Dee says, no, we're having Cosmos. And the waitress admits she has a drinking problem. So Dee says she'll take a Cosmo and just hold it in her hand. Artemis is trying to order Irish car bombs. Then you guys, I can't get through this. Some guys come up, and it's the best part of the whole episode because they come up hitting on the girls, and Dee tries to talk to them. Artemis cuts them off and says, oh God, this is gross. If you have kids in the room, you're going to want to get them out of there. Okay, she says, I have a bleached asshole. I know, I'm giving her a southern accent, but she kind of says it like that. I have a bleached asshole. She says that very loudly, and everybody's completely speechless, and I was laughing so hard I was crying when I was writing that out. Okay, so then we go to Frank and Charlie's, and they're wearing these very disgusting PJs. Charlie wears these pants in a lot of episodes, and Frank's wearing whatever the hell this is. They're climbing into their shared couch bed. Mac and Dennis are standing there so they can analyze and figure out the truth. So they're trying to get them to show what positions they were in the night of the incident. Frank says, we sleep ass to ass. You know that. Mac and Dennis, oh my God, I can't even. They say it's an overnight situation. They need to investigate them. So Mac and Dennis decide they're going to have a sleepover and watch what happens and figure out what's going on here. Someone lets out a very large fart and they try to peek under the covers to see who it was. So it's the middle of the night. Mac is so tired. He's trying to pass out. Dennis is like, it's cool. I'll stay up and keep watch. Again, to see who's pooping the bed. Oh, God. Mac says he's just going to sleep for 15 minutes and then they'll switch. So you know what's going to happen here. It just flashes to the morning. Mac wakes up and he smells it. And he pulls back the covers. I can't show it on here, but you can imagine what's in the bed. It's so gross. Mac makes this face and he yells, my God. Then we go over to Dee, Artemis, and the waitress, and they're at a shoe store. So Dee says, we have to have class. We can't tell people about our bleached asshole to Artemis. I can't get through that to Artemis. They're walking around looking at shoes. And then she says to the waitress, and you shouldn't be drinking in a shoe store. And the waitress says, I have a drinking problem. And then she says, well, then you should know how to hold your booze a little bit better. And she said, I'll hold your boobs a little better. You guys, the writing, so much better on this. So the shop owner comes over to help with the shoes, and Dee says she needs a size 13. The waitress is completely wasted and says, I don't like this bitch's attitude, talking about the shop owner. And so Dee says that they need to get her out of there. We see Dee trying on the shoes. They do not fit right. Her feet are all caught up and mangled in them. And the lady says, okay, that'll be $700. So Dee hands her credit card and is talking about this French restaurant, this bistro that they're going to be going out to dinner. And the lady says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, your card has been declined." So Dee's like, "Oh, really? Let me try another one." And she takes off running to try to steal it. And you guys, again, another hilarious spot. She runs head first into this car. Now, I tried to find information about it. I couldn't find it. My husband believes he heard, maybe on commentary or something, that she actually fell. She wasn't meant to fall like this, but she did, which I totally believe because it looks so realistic. Bumped her head into this car and fell down. So then we go back to the bar. It's Frank and Charlie. They're arguing about the poop. Dennis says, well, we could just have them produce another sample and we'll reference the original sample. Okay, they'll have to do it in front of us. So they go to get newspaper to have them do this. Meanwhile, Dee brings Artemis and the waitress to the bar. The waitress says, "How do you still not know my name?" That's an ongoing joke. Of course, we never learn the waitress's name. They walk in and Charlie is trying to poop. The waitress is completely smashed. Oh, P.S. How did I not put that together? We didn't learn Big's name till last episode. I wonder if they'll do that with the waitress. So the waitress is completely smashed. She says, "Were you just pooping on the floor?" And then she tells them she says, "Bite me, asshole," when they say don't drink out of our bar. Dee says, "Wow, you have a bad attitude when you're drinking." And the waitress says, "You have a bad attitude when you're drinking, you huge-footed slut." Oh, it just made me laugh so hard, you guys. So funny. Okay. So they say, she says, "I'm going to get more wasted and bang some random dudes." Of course, Charlie has always wanted to get with a waitress. So he says, "Me too," or says, "Bang me," or something like that. She says, "No." Artemis says she wants to stick around and help figure out the poop thing. Dee says she's going to go find classy people and people who don't talk about their bleached assholes. So then we're at a gallery, and Dee says, "Oh, that's an interesting piece." And they're looking at art, and okay, so this is wild. They start looking at the art. She really gets into it and starts noticing. They talk about chunky earth tones, and you can just smell it. Well, it turns out the whole exhibit has to do with poop. So she freaks out because she can't escape it. And she tries to get out of there. So meanwhile, back at the bar, we see the power go out. And all of a sudden, another turd appears. And I hate that word turd, but that's what they call it. Artemis says, "Nobody move. Everybody's a suspect." And she paces back and forth. 4 turds, 5 suspects. So she goes through this whole theory. I'm not even going to go over every detail because it doesn't even matter. She basically names who she thought. She thought Frank was first, second was Charlie, third was Mac, possibly Dennis, and goes from there. Well, then she says the one, she calls Dee a lonely bitch. Oh God, I can't get through this. Lonely bitch, slutty whore who sat down when the lights went out and then she pooped. So she's going over this whole big theory. She even goes into a theory that maybe Frank got a hold of Rickety Cricket, one of my favorite characters on the show, because he's known for, quote, making fecal forgery. Well, they go through this whole theory, and Frank stands up and basically says, "Nah, I did it." He said, "I did all the poops." He says, "I even did one while she was wrapping up right now." And they show the floor, and he has. And they say, "Why did you do that, dude?" And he said, "Because poop's funny." So everybody laughs and says, "Well played, man, well played." And Dee says, "I hate my life." You guys, that is how the episode ends. I laughed and laughed covering this one. It's so funny that it relates so much back to And Just Like That / Sex in the City. Plus, a lot of you guys have mentioned And Just Like That should be called And Just Like Crap. So here we go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It really was fun to cover. If you have something else you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments. I appreciate all of your comments. Do check out my Patreon, check out my merch, and let me know if you have any questions at all or anything else you want to talk about. I hope you have a fantastic week. I will talk to you again soon. Stay healthy and safe. Bye-bye.